Our co-group that's working with us is Return to Learn Maryland Schools, and that is who we have on the Zoom meeting. They actually started out in Carroll County, so this is Christina Olson, and she's up in Carroll County. But they're going to put on the third event, which will be a Facebook Live event, again with a panel of experts. So if you can't come back Friday, you can always hit their event and type in your questions, and I'm sure they'll do their best to answer you. But I'm going to let Christina introduce herself and tell you a little bit about Return to Learn.
Sure. Thank you guys so much for having me, and I'm really glad that you guys are interested in this event and for hosting it. Return to Learn Maryland Schools is a Facebook group that started out in Carroll County and has grown statewide. We're a community-based group, nonpartisan, focused on equitable and practical evidence-based student-friendly policies. We have a little, close to 3,000 members in our group now. We have several calls to actions, including times that we do rallies, and we've done petitions, and we've done protests. So if you would like to take a look at that, you can find us online at www.returntolearnmd.com, or you can find us on Facebook at Return to Learn Maryland Schools, and that's the number 2, Return to Learn. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. So what ReOpen St. Mary's is, as you know, as the lockdown came down and as things kept getting worse and worse and the goalposts kept moving, Cindy was doing a great job educating a lot of the people that she conspires with, she emails with. And I was one of them. And we started talking and we're like, wow, we really need to do something. So that's really how our group came together, which has been great. We got a Facebook page. We've been doing different events. We did a rally. We really communicated with the county commissioners, the Board of Health, to try and get them to change things. We need more people to join us to help us do that. One of the other things we did, we encouraged and got the school board and the superintendent to hold their virtual town hall. And I don't know if any of you caught that, but they've done at least 3 so far, and that is because we've been pushing them for that. They'll tell you they had already had that in the plans, but nothing had been announced when we started pushing for it, so maybe just things came together and that worked great. But as you know, they are going to have to jump through hoops to get the kids back in school. So it turns out Cindy became aware of a call that more people were becoming interested in homeschooling. So Cindy, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I want to reference an individual that's not here tonight. He's a founding member of our ReOpen St. Mary's group and also a candidate for St. Mary's County School Board, and his name is DeForest Rathbone. And about 2 weeks ago, I think it was, wasn't it, Reverend Dan? He sent an email, I think to you and I, maybe some other people were copied on it, and he started talking about, well, as a candidate for school board, looking at all these issues with reopening, here's the issues I see, and he's got this whole laundry list of issues. And I felt like, oh my goodness, I am a former homeschool mom, and if I were looking at this for my child, I would be going, maybe I should take a look at homeschooling. And I remembered back a number of years ago, it might be as long as 10 years ago, I'm really dating myself now, maybe 10 years ago or so, I was a first-time homeschool mom, and I remember those days not knowing anyone else, not knowing who to ask, not knowing what resources were out there, not knowing how to interface with the local school district. And so I thought, okay, we need to have an information meeting. And so what you see tonight in terms of these 3 meetings that are going to take place and all that came out of that initial email.
So Cindy Jones put together this panel, which has been great. She's been really spearheading it and trying to find the resources and information to put together. And we thought it was important to get it to you as soon as we could. So that is why the idea came up maybe less than 2 weeks ago. We said, hey, when can we do it? We found the dates, started finding people, and we pressed. So while there was a little bit more information we were hoping to have for you tonight, we're still putting it together. We'll be happy to pass it out to you either through emails, on a Facebook page, or however you want to receive it as we get it. But in the meantime, I would like the panel members to introduce themselves and talk about what you bring to the panel and what you can do to help answer questions that our participants need. Cindy, you want to start?
I can speak a little bit more. I'm a 6.5-year homeschool mom. One of the things I bring to the table is I started homeschooling because I had a child with a learning disability that was diagnosed by a medical professional. And that led us to homeschooling. Now, that might not be the only reason to homeschool, but that's the reason why we homeschool. In addition to that, I'm a former elected official, so I've worked on the school's budget and dealt with all of the issues with the public schools. So if you have questions about that end of things, I can certainly address those for you. Also, because I had a child with learning difficulties, we did a lot of different things. And so in St. Mary's County, I've had children in public schools, I've had children in private schools. I've homeschooled as a standalone effort. I've homeschooled using both homeschool cooperatives in the county. So I can speak at least from some kind of experience from all of those different things that are available in the county. And so I can tell you, whatever your child needs, St. Mary's County is a really good place because we have a lot of different things to offer. And regardless of what my children needed, I could always find something here in the county that answered their needs. So I guess the only other thing I would say is you may think that you don't have time or that you don't have the ability to homeschool. I was a first-time homeschooler. I was an elected official, very busy, ran a small business out of my home, and I still made time for homeschooling. And I feel like if I can do that, you can do it. So just relax, take a deep breath. We're here to help you and support you. And please feel free to answer whatever questions or ask whatever questions or concerns are on your heart tonight.
I like the part better, answer whatever questions. You go ahead.
Okay, my name is Shannon McLaughlin. I have 5 children, the oldest of which I just graduated. I homeschooled her all the way through. I've always homeschooled my children. I guess what I can bring to the table is that idea that when you're first deciding to homeschool, I didn't plan to homeschool. I was definitely putting my kids in school, but I had a daughter who's a late summer birthday. And she had always been home with me, and just the year before she was to go into kindergarten, the state of Maryland decided it would no longer be a half-day kindergarten, it would be a full-day kindergarten. And I decided that this very young 5-year-old, having just turned 5, where some kids might be closer to 6, that wasn't really going to be suited for her, having been home. So I thought, I'll just homeschool her for kindergarten, how hard that can be, how hard can that be, and I'll put her in first grade. And well, it went so well, and we loved it so much that we continued. And each year I do that. You know, at the end of the year, we decide, okay, is this still the right path for us? And it has continued to be the right path for us. So I guess what I can bring to the table is sort of, beginning and trying to navigate that. It can be overwhelming. There are a lot of resources out there. I've looked into a lot. I'm a big researcher, and so I have a lot of information in terms of good ways to get started. I've also participated in 2 of the tutorials in this area, which are different than cooperatives. Tutorials in the area, and I'm involved in leadership on the board of both of those. So I have a lot of experience there. And then I would say that having graduated one and on the college path, that it is possible to homeschool all the way through, in through high school, do it successfully, have a child who scored fantastically on the SAT and has, lots of opportunities for mainstream colleges to go to, and so helping to navigate that path through middle and high school and into the college arena is also something that I can help guide folks through.
My name is Collins Bailey. I live in Charles County. I have 4 children. The youngest is 30, 32, 34, and 36. 3 boys, and the youngest is a little girl. And 30-year-old little girl. At any rate, I sat down when we started having children and asked myself what I wanted my children, what attributes I wanted my children to have, and what I wanted to try to promote. And I made a list of things I'd like to avoid, made a list of things that I'd like to see them to develop in, and then made my choice on each child based on that list. And we end up homeschooling ours all the way through. My except for my youngest, she wanted the high school experience. That was a big mistake. We still haven't gotten over that, but at any rate, she's a manager at a bank. My others are self-employed. But I think that's a question as parents that we all ask. What do I want to pass on to my children? And depending on what your answer is, maybe I'll get kicked off the panel here, but depends on what your answer is how you would decide on education. You might look at that and say, this is what I want for my child, and the best way to get this for my child is put them in one of the schools that has the worst reputation, because, whatever. But it just depends on what you want for your child. So we homeschooled ours all the way through. I was on the Board of Education for 16 years, four-year terms, sentences. And when I first got elected, there were only 2 homeschoolers out of the 15,800 school boards. There's only 2 homeschoolers that were board members. I was one of them, the other was in California. But by the time I got off, homeschool had become more mainstream. And people didn't look at you like you were crazy. When you say you want to homeschool, now they say, good for you. Before it's like, what's wrong with you? All right?
That's right.
So, we've seen a lot of things change, and hopefully tonight you'll get some questions answered that will give you an opportunity to focus on, the best outcome or the best pathway to get whatever outcome you want for your child.
All right, well, as you all are thinking of your questions, I'll get you started. How do you get started homeschooling your kids? Once you make that decision that you want to homeschool, where do you go?
Well, let me add that one. That's such an easy one. Since it's a small group, I'll say this, but we're being Zoomed, so.
It's only her.
When do you make your decision to homeschool? I think that's when you become pregnant. All parents homeschool. Some homeschool with the assistance of a public school, some homeschool with the assistance of a private school, some do it completely on their own. But I don't know any good parent that doesn't have some interest in their child's education. What'd you learn in school today? You're homeschooling. I have a
Maybe I misworded my question. Where do I go to start?
Well.
What you need to do is you need to file the notification.
I need the process.
So you need to, there's a Maryland notification form that you need to fill out. You can print that off of the internet. I can probably help you locate that later. And that form is completed, signed, and sent into your local school board to whatever division
Is in charge of homeschooling, the oversight of homeschooling for your county. And then at that point, you're pretty much, you're homeschooling, and then you have choices to make about how you're gonna go about doing it. Are you gonna use a virtual academy? Are you going to buy an all-in-one package from some of these package providers that give you every subject you need for every grade, and you're gonna do it completely on your own? Are you going to pick and choose through co-ops and tutorials? So there are myriad options that way, and so I guess the research begins maybe before you send the notification form in, but that's your first step. You have to notify the county, and I believe you need to do it 2 weeks before you actually begin the homeschooling process, if I'm understanding correctly, if your child's already enrolled, but you would need to do it at least 2 weeks before school started, I think is the guideline for that.
So is there a checklist that, okay, like step 1, do this, step 2, start looking at this, or is it just learn on the fly?
I can answer that question. I actually found a very good article that talks about it. I think that the title of the article, and there's many articles and other materials up here for all of you to use, but it talks about you've decided to homeschool, now what? And it gives you some ideas about what you need to do. And so a lot of parents have gone through this, and so there's a lot of people that can help you with that, but that certainly is a thing that has some references about what you might do. We might want to consider something called Homeschool Legal Defense Association. Collins, do you want to talk about that? You probably know more about that than I do.
They were a pretty young organization when I got started, and they're very helpful in states and jurisdictions that antagonistic toward homeschoolers. What it is you pay a certain amount a year. I don't remember the amount. It's probably changed now anyway. And then if you ever need help, they're there to help you. You know, no additional. It's like buying insurance, whatever. So we joined just because we wanted to help the movement, but you know, we didn't really see where we would need it. I never filed as a homeschool person until I got on the school board, and then they said, "Hey, you're on the school board and you never filed with the county that you're homeschooling. Could you please do that so we don't look bad?" But anyway, you know, they have been very successful in helping in areas where maybe there is some pushback. He's in Virginia. He's got his own college now, Patrick Henry College. And there was a case in Virginia that I thought was fascinating. You made me think of it when you were talking earlier, where this lady had a child that was listed as, labeled as you know, learning deficient or whatever. And so the parent was just not having a good experience. So she took the child out, taught him himself, didn't know anything, just taught the child himself. In Virginia, you have to come back for testing. We don't do that here. No, in Charles County, they said, "Look, you know all these homeschoolers." I don't, but would you please tell them, don't bring so much stuff. We don't want to look at all this stuff. We just want to check the boxes, whatever. But anyway, so they came back for testing, and the child tested as gifted and talented. And they said, "Oh, well, you're not qualified to teach a gifted and talented student." I said, "Wait a minute, you had them, it was, I have for 6 months as gifted and talented?" So the guy that's head of that fair, or whatever his name,
Tim Ferriss.
Thank you. See, here's the brains up here, and I'm just kind of sordid. But anyway, they fought that and they won, and you know, they had to go through a process, whatever. But you know, there are resources out there. I just kind of did it, you know. My children were 11, 9, 7, and 5 when I was on the school board. I'd never been in contact with the school board. I never filed anything, never signed anything. And when I did do it, they're going down this list of questions, and I was still on question 2, and he's already checking down on 7. So he said, "Okay, you're done." And wait a minute, I hadn't finished question 2 yet. Whatever. So it's all good. Shouldn't have said that on Zoom, but anyway.
I really think that, you know, in answer to your question, oh, go ahead. Christina?
Hey Deb, if I can chime in, we do have a list of all of the links that you need to submit the forms for every county in the state. If you do decide to homeschool on Return to Learn, we do have that list for you. And we also have links to both the article that was mentioned as well as the organization for legal counsel that was mentioned if you need those.
Fantastic, thank you. Shannon?
I was just going to say that I think it really depends on what your specific situation is. If you have a high schooler and you only need a certain number of classes, your choice in terms of how you'll go about it after you file your notification. And if we weren't 5 weeks or 4 weeks away from the start of the school year, maybe the order in which you would do these things might be different. You might do a little more research on the front end before you filed your form. But I would say if you feel pretty confident that you want to homeschool, you would go ahead and file your form. And then because this is sort of a crash course, you've got 4 or 5 weeks, and at that point you try to accelerate the research in terms of how are you going to go about doing it. You're going to use a package curriculum, or you're going to pick and choose because that's what you need. Do you work? Do you not work? What do you need? So it's hard to say exactly what each parent, it's sort of the beauty of homeschooling. It suits whatever it is that you need, and that's going to be different, the order in which you do things and what you'll need to do based on what it is you're looking for out of homeschooling. So while I think that the checklists are fantastic, what to do next, I would definitely reference that article. It is going to be different for each person, I think.
So Shannon, have you found the state to be friendly to homeschooling?
I have.
And the county too?
That's been my experience. I'm in Charles County.
Okay.
And I've always found Charles County to be fantastically supportive of homeschooling.
You're welcome.
So yes, I have never had any kind of a bad reception from them. I know that at one point they transitioned over, the person who was in charge of homeschooling didn't understand the COMAR guideline very well, but HSLDA stepped in and kind of helped them interpret that. They were overstepping what they were looking for in terms of the reporting, but they were very amenable.
and open to hearing that and then adjusting what they were looking for. So yes, I've always had a positive experience.
Great. And a quick question for you, Christina.
Yes?
I know you were about to turn away. You were talking about having to notify the school by a certain time, so it wouldn't count against enrollment. Could you talk about that real quick, please?
Sure. So if you're considering homeschooling, one of the things, and it's as a result of the current lockdowns or shutdowns of school, and that is the decision that you're making. There are different dates depending on the county, is my understanding. But I think if you make your announcement to the schools by August 31st, you would be captured under all of the counties. And what that would do was that would make sure that your student is not counted in the population of students for the funding of the school. So one of the things that we're doing at Return to Learn is we're putting a lot of the pressure on our Board of Education throughout the state, our State Board of Education as well as the County Board of Education, to say, if you do not open our schools and you do not have our children in our schools, then we're going to take them out and you're not going to get that funding, because why should we be paying to school our own children? And that is one of the ways that we are working to try to put some pressure on the local counties. So if that is a reason that you're considering homeschooling, is because you don't have the option and you don't feel comfortable with what the schools are offering you, I would recommend that you do that and make sure that your paperwork is submitted prior to that date.
So September the 5th.
Great, thank you.
Well, definitely open it up. Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
so I kind of missed something, and I think I have. So when it comes to the expense, what are the expenses for homeschooling? And on an average, if that's...
Well, you know, your biggest expense, other than your time, but as far as money outlay, would be for your books.
Okay.
And, you know, maybe a couple $100. I'm probably a little different than what we have up here. I use the organic approach, and I had the mindset that the child, when they're ready to learn, they'll learn. And I got that from Raymond Moore, Better Late Than Early. And what we did, we didn't do like a classroom type of thing. Some homeschoolers, and you know, that's what they want, that's fine. They're, all right, sit down, we're having class, and you know, they make it look like a school. We just didn't do that. What we did is we just lived our life. I had a business in the home. I had my children work in the business. And we go to the grocery store, we take the children with us, and I'd give each of them a quarter and say, here, get whatever you want. And so my second born looked at a quarter and said, oh, 5. I said, no, that's 25. No, that's 5 donut holes, you know, 5 cents a piece. So, you know, just as we would go through life, we would give them opportunity to apply. And I would challenge everybody in this room, what did you learn in school that you used in your adult life? For most of us, I mean, I had algebra, I had trigonometry, I had all that stuff. I don't use any of that stuff. And so we use life skills. And Raymond Moore says that when the child's ready to learn, they'll learn. And a lot of ones go through public school or private school, and in some cases homeschool, they end up hating school. And that's because they're forced to do stuff they're not into. My second born is a self-taught meteorologist, better than the ones you saw on television with Vortex 3 or whatever. And you know, his own business, they've all been self-taught. And when they need to learn something, they just go figure out a way to learn it and learn it. And the way we did that is when they were interested in math, we would do math. And when they're interested in, now how do you do math? Well, they like to do cooking, where you got to do measurements and all that kind of stuff. And when they're interested in reading, we do reading. And so my 4 children would be very focused on maybe one area. So, well, they're not well-rounded. Well, they get enough of that, then they're ready for the next part. And so some of them learned to read very young, some of them learned to read very, you know, much later. I made my answer so long, I forget what your question was. What was the expense? So we really didn't have much in the way of expense. Our biggest expense probably was we would always have, we call it family time, didn't call it school. At 7:30, everything stops, and we would have some Bible reading, and then we'd read, you know, Little House on the Prairie or whatever. And I chose books that were 100 years old or older, so that we could get a perspective, you know, because the newer one, whatever. So, you know, just some books and that type of thing. But It was pretty minimal because other stuff we had anyway. And the way my children learned to write their name was we had a checkbook that we didn't need anymore because the bank had stopped and we moved banks, whatever. So they, they'd have where they had a little grocery store and they'd have to sign their name on the check and fill out. And so it was all just life experience. And it's like, well, how are you going to do this one? My children learned to drive a car when they were 6 years old. Whatever, I'd sit them in my lap, they couldn't reach the pedals and say, okay, tell me what to do. But if you're going to go hog wild into it, probably a couple $100 for books.
It can range, for me, I took a more relaxed approach when they were younger,
And then a more structured approach as they got older. I wanted them to grow up to be happy, healthy individuals with good character. But I also didn't want to be the reason they couldn't be anything they wanted to be in life. So I did want them to be able to go through all of those, algebra and trig. My oldest is registered for Calc 2. She wants to be a high school math teacher, bilingual high school math teacher. She's registered for Calc 3. She took Spanish 4 in her senior year. So we took a more structured approach as they got a little older. And I would say that your books, you can get them used online. And so you can, depends on the grade, but somewhere between $25 and $100 per subject for texts. If you go with a packaged curriculum through, say, Calvert School or Rebecca that gives you everything for the whole grade, you're looking at more like $800 to $1,200. So it's going to depend on which direction you go.
Prices have gone up since I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, Christina, go ahead.
I did want to let you know that we do plan to have at least one homeschool curriculum offering, an organization that provides that curriculum on our panel on the third Zoom that we will be doing. So if people are really interested in getting a curriculum out of the box or using one of those organizations, we picked out a couple that we're hoping to have on that panel to answer some of those additional questions.
Great.
Okay.
And Cindy, you were telling me how you did yours?
After I homeschooled a little while, I got kind of savvy about not spending a lot of money. So let me just share a couple of tips that I learned sort of along the way. Like for literature, I remember one year my son needed to read the book Little Women. Well, my goodness, I could have gone and bought Little Women, but why would I do that when I can check it out of the library? I had a child that had difficulty with math, and Saxon math was recommended to me. Saxon math has been around a long time, and I was able to go on eBay and get the curriculum for his grade and buy used the textbook, the quiz master, the teacher's guide, and everything except the actual workbook, because the workbook had been used. Then I went to the publisher and did some internet research and bought only the workbook. So I got the other part of the curriculum for like 20 to 30% of what the list price was. And then I went to the publisher and paid full price for just the workbook. So my experience, which is like maybe 10 to 6 years ago, was I spent probably no more than $200 to $300 a year on curriculum. And even when
for all the subjects?
For all the subjects per year, $200 to $300 per year, being savvy. There's also places you can go, and if you get plugged into the local tutorials, I know at least one of them does a curriculum swap. So they have a child that's finished a curriculum and they can swap it or sell it to you at a discounted price, so you may want to check into that. Even online learning, as your student gets older, I let my older child take chemistry online because I didn't feel like I was equipped to do that. And shopping around and finding and comparing prices, you can get a very good high-level curriculum, interactive online curriculum, and not break the bank.
Okay. So speaking of online, is there an opportunity to, say, homeschool online with someone, so that she can be more accountable to them versus me?
Yes. Yes, there are a number of, myriad options for that.
Okay.
Veritas Press, Versity Academy, Excelsior Academy.
Okay.
There's some of those. Say Becca have something even now. I think Becca even has something now. There are a lot of those packaged providers that have online academies, and then individually there are online Time for Learning. There are so many now.
Okay,
Yes.
so in going that route, are there fees with those for that?
Yes, and those are going to be more. Those are going to be your more expensive options.
Okay.
For sure.
Like averaging?
Gosh, so a Time for Learning might run you a class with them might run you something like $150. Veritas Press.
Per class?
$150 a class, but Veritas Press will run you $700 a class.
Okay.
So
Okay. Well,
there's a
scratch
range.
that
There's a
off.
range with those online folks.
Okay, thank you.
Can I mention another one, if what you were thinking of? Liberty University, if you all are familiar, my mother-in-law has worked for 35 years. There's a huge Christian school in Lynchburg. They have recently, in the last 5 years, started offering a homeschool academy online. All the teachers are certified. You have to be certified in the state of Virginia to even work at the large Christian academy there, but that would be an option as well. I think if you just go to their website, like it's Liberty University, but then they have a homeschool academy, and we know a number of people who personally use that for their kids, that they're work-at-home parents. It's all accredited, all the testing is there, all the teachers are licensed, and the price should be very visible.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because my understanding too, that in the high school years,
They do some sort of matching what you spend there. If your child decides to go to university there, then they will transfer some of that money you've spent for the high school classes and give you credit for that toward the college tuition.
And they may even have financial aid available. I'm not sure, but I do know that the actual school on campus in Lynchburg has financial aid. The university does significant financial aid. So it's just an option. But most of the websites, like if you did Classical Conversations locally, they would have their tuition rate on their website. And isn't there a homeschool academy in St. Mary's? And they have theirs online?
There's Homeschool Christian Academy, which is typically kindergarten through 8th, 9th. Then there's California Christian Tutorial, that's typically 8th through 12th. I think there's Southern Maryland Homeschool. That's K all the way through, I think. That's more local. And Anchor Christian is in Calvert. So.
Okay. Other questions?
Well, thank you.
No, sit down.
So everyone sets their own schedule. Like he said that he, incorporated with his job or whatnot. So it's not like a regular school day, 8 to 2 or 8 to 3 or whatever like that. It's basically not like that.
it's up to you.
Okay.
I tried to guard, with my younger kids, I tried to guard 9 to 12, 9 in the morning to 12,
Mm-hmm.
and really make sure that we
Cranked out those foundational subjects during that time.
Mm-hmm.
I've had friends who are nurses who's homeschooled their kids, and their homeschool day is varied. Nurses work these 12-hour shifts, but they work 3 days, so there was no homeschooling, say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but there was homeschooling Thursday through Saturday.
Okay.
you
So
can
the whole
work-
thing is that you cover what's supposed to be covered by the end of the given time.
Yeah, and you'll work around your schedule, whatever that might be. And if you want to set something very structured that's similar to, sort of what you envision school at,
Right.
that,
The structure would
the
definitely
structure
have
there.
to be there. Yeah.
You can do that if you want to be more flexible and
do a more organic approach where they learn as you live. That's certainly an option too. It's very
Okay.
flexible.
Okay.
Give you two kind of perspectives. I was down at Stratford Hall and they gave the tour. It was very interesting. Had so much on with me. They had 600,000 bricks in that building. Little piece of trivia for you. But when we got to the basement, they said this is where the classrooms were held. Said from age 0 to 5, their job is to just be a child. Once they turn 5, then they come here and they're tutored for 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, 12 months, the whole year. And that's how
some of the founding fathers, you know, their type of education. I'm thinking, 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, 52 weeks a year. But on the other hand, we have something in Charles County, I'm sure it's in St. Mary's as well, called home instruction, different than homeschooling. Homeschooling is where you do it. Home instruction is where your child's in the public school, and for whatever reason, they're going to be out for a period of time, you know, broke the leg or whatever. And they really had to work to refine that because they were having a huge problem. They take a person that didn't have a teaching degree, that was getting paid minimum wage, that wasn't certified, that was going out and working with this child in the home. And when they came back, the child was so far ahead of their class, they couldn't get them to mesh in. So they said, what are we going to do? So they finally figured it out that they told these, you may not, under any circumstance, spend more than 2 hours a week with that child. Because if you do, you're going to get them too far ahead of their class. Now, I've read that some years ago, I guess it's still true, that a parent spending 15 minutes a day is equal to a public school spending the whole time. So, on the one hand, you know, it depends on what your goal is. If you want them to help write the Declaration of Independence, U.S. Constitution, maybe it's 10 hours a day, 6 days a week for their whole life. And if you're, on the other hand, you just want them to be, you know, good people with good character, whatever. I just never was, I personally didn't like the classroom setting when I went through it. I was in a track system, anybody know what that is? Where they take the students and give them a test. By grace, it was out of math. I've always been good at math. So they put the top 30, the next 30, the next 30. So I was in the top class with all these smart people. I could do math, but I wasn't good at the other subjects. And when I got in 12th grade, they broke all that up. They said, we're not doing track system anymore. You know, you're not allowed to do that. So they brought us together, the class that I went to school from 7th grade on, and said, you know, y'all are ready for calculus, and we don't have, you know, you're breaking them up. And so for half of your class, you know, half of your school day, we don't have any classes for you. You know, at 4 years of French, I can't speak more than 2 lines of French, so what did they do anyway? But, so they gave us an option, said you could just go to study hall, or you can run the halls, or you can go to the library, do whatever you want, or you go to independent study, but you're on your own for 3 classes. So I always laugh when they say, well, you know, I don't feel qualified to teach this person. I taught myself in high school in 12th grade. You know, I had 3 classes that we went to that were kind of remedial French 4, you know, that type of thing. You don't have to take any of that, Bailey. Why are you doing it? Because all the girls are in French 4. It's only Joe Birch and I in there, and all the rest of them. But, you know, I think that that's a personal decision that you make based on your vision for your child.
I think, one of the things that I picked up on what you were just saying is that it is true. I would submit to you that it's absolutely true that you and your child can accomplish that work in half the time.
Oh, absolutely.
So don't feel like you need to run a 6-hour school day or whatever it is that they're normally in. You should be able to do that in far fewer days. And you could hit your foundational subjects every day, and you could do science on Monday, Wednesday, and history on Tuesday, Thursday, and, you know, one of the other electives on Friday. You have a lot of flexibility, but you should certainly be able to do it in far fewer hours then.
And so how do you incorporate being with other students, kids? How do you set that up, or do you?
I can
I
answer
told you that was question
I know,
number 2.
he knew that question was coming. He prepared me. We tried to gather up the questions we anticipated. A lot of people have asked me, especially after being a county commissioner, well, your kids aren't in public school. How do your kids get socialized? And my answer has always been, your children are going to be socialized whether or not they participate in public education. And so the question becomes, as a homeschool parent, what kind of socialization do I choose for my child to participate in? And the things that we chose for our older son to participate in, he was involved in Boy Scouts, he was involved in youth group and Sunday school, and then we had other kids that played like recreational sports like Parks and Recs and all that. And then I know there's a homeschool group, and I believe you referred to them before, and I didn't participate in them, but I've known that they've done things like they'll all meet together at a park on Friday and have a cookout and let the kids play. And if you're interested in doing that, we can find out about that and connect you. So there's a lot of things going on in the community that your children can be participating in without being involved in public schools.
Okay.
For St. Mary's County, I can speak from having moved here 19 years ago. I was used to a county having a Parks and Recs program that was much more scaled down than ours is. Our St. Mary's County Parks and Recs program has a phenomenal amount of things available for youth. If you haven't checked that out, I encourage you to do that. Arts programs, camps programs, sports, just any number of things. And also your local libraries have programs for kids.
So have the libraries opened back yet?
I think they're on the verge of
and the
opening
parks?
on a limited basis.
The Parks and Recs too, have they opened here?
I'm not sure yet.
Okay.
Ma'am, you had a question?
Yes, I know they have different programs that you have talked about. Now, with respect of what is required from the, for them to get graduation, how do I make sure that every program is target those prerequisites or whatever that a kid needs to have in middle school and high school? Like for example, it sounds so beautiful to me just to take them, you learn Spanish with me, cooking with me, but how do I make sure that I'm targeting to at the end of the, semester, I can say, okay, my kid learned this, and then he passes.
Like, do they have certain tests that they're required to take and pass or something?
So no, in homeschool, you're not required to pass those, part tests and things that the county requires.
So how do you know when they've graduated?
Yeah,
High
like
school.
every year, am I supposed to have one of my milestones, I guess is the word then, right? The milestones
Oh, they know that they're on a certain grade level that they're supposed to be on.
Like I'm teaching my son, he's in 7th grade, going to 8th grade, and his math has to be some sort of level, right? So how do I make sure that I'm on target?
Mm-hmm. So the guideline established by the state of Maryland is fairly loose. So I will say to you that as long as you're showing clear and consistent instruction in each of the 8 subject areas as defined by the county and the state up until a certain grade, then they're satisfied. You individually will then decide what that means. So if you want to be sure that they're staying on grade level that would be maybe consistent with the public school grade level, then you would choose a curriculum, and they're like that. So they have them, Saxon has books will say Saxon 6/7. It's for the average 6th grader, the average 7th grader and advanced 6th grader. That's how that grading goes. Math Mammoth has Math Mammoth 5, 6, 7, 8, and then there's a book titled Algebra and Geometry and so on. So you'll know that you're on track, say, for math that way. But you should feel free prior to high school to marry a lot of those things. You might take your history curriculum, and that will also be your writing will be centered around whatever you're studying for history. Your literature might also be centered around whatever it is you're studying for history. So now you're covering some of your English and your history all in one. By the time you get to high school, there is a list of X number of math credits, X number of English credits they need to satisfy for graduation. You no longer have to cover all 8. Once they've done 1 fine arts credit for all of high school, they're done with fine arts. They don't have to do art every year.
Do they have to get a GED with that? Or we said, okay,
You decide that they've graduated.
okay.
And I looked it up real quick. Library's open last Monday.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am?
So my question is, I do have the high schooler, so he has already he'll be a sophomore. So he has already met those fine art credit, credit, and FOT here, or Foundations of Technology in St. Mary's. So when making his schedule at his school for next year, we had to pick these. Spanish 1, which he is not going to be college bound. He's already made that clear. Chorus again in art, and those are 3 classes that he doesn't even want. So when I prepare his curriculum, I can push those out of the way
Absolutely.
because he plans on taking bass lessons to cover the music and
Cool.
photography to cover the art
Right.
and work out every day to cover the PE.
Yeah.
Now, also my question is, when you mentioned about marrying them, with history, since he loves history and it's actually, he's supposed to take government in the 10th grade, I guess, I can intertwine the writing and everything as long as I show proof that he does it.
Absolutely.
Because I'm pulling my hair out trying to find a good, solid literature without him having a fit that he has to read Jane Eyre.
So there's something called Beautiful Feet,
Okay.
which is Charlotte Mason that has
History through literature. It does have a spine also for the history and sort of the underlying historical time period that you choose. They have medieval and modern US and so on. But it's got these wonderful books that are not Jane Eyre that you might really enjoy, that I think boys in particular love. I have a son who loves history too. And so yeah, it's a wonderful way to save time. And you're doing all of that around something he's already interested in. Why not write about history? He loves history.
why not, you know,
Because the same thing like with the science, like it's supposed to be biology. Because I'm on the same thing, trying to make sure he at least graduates or, you know, a GED when he's 17, because I think they can take it at the age of 17.
Mhm.
You can take the GED test. So we found a biology curriculum, but it has the labs or everything at home. Like there's no microscope involved, there's nothing I'd have to pay extra money for. Because that was another concern, putting out all this money for these labs for science, like a $300 microscope.
And Christina, you were gonna add something?
Yes, I was going to add conversation about the socialism, how to socialize our children. I wanted to say that there's a ton of resources of parents that have choose to homeschool that are also looking to do pods. And Facebook is full of those pods in different counties of parents that are saying, hey, I have a child of this age, and we're looking to, have, a couple of families come together and homeschool together for the socialization and also to share the responsibilities. So we're trying now on Return to Learn to make the connections with those pods in the counties. But I would recommend that if that's something that you're looking for and some support that you're looking for with other parents, that's something that you definitely take a look at.
Thank you.
Pam? Yes, ma'am.
So I know for St. Mary's, I don't know if it's a statewide thing or not, but what I was reading is that they have to do like a review twice a year of a portfolio. Are they just looking for like the broad spectrum? I have an elementary school age child, so I mean, all the subjects from math and reading to art and music, or are they just looking for like the base, or just everything in general that we've covered through the year? Like, just looking for guidance on what I need to throw into this portfolio.
I know what that was 20 years ago, 15 years ago. You have a portfolio, you just put in there to show that they're receiving regular instruction.
And the guy that was in charge, Mr. Warwick, probably shouldn't say the names, he asked me, could you please get the message out to the homeschoolers, don't bring the wheelbarrow load of stuff, and I just want something I can go through. And so, we would take just something that they did and we just stick it in the portfolio, so we did the organic approach, so maybe it was a copy of the recipe that we did, whatever. Or maybe it was some of the checks that they wrote their name on, whatever. I think and I have current information on that was years ago, but I suspect it's probably still kind of the same, and it depends on who's doing the reviewing. Some people are going to be more thorough. The one that we interface with, it's like, as I said, we're doing a 10-question thing. Are they doing math or doing? I was still in question 2. He said, "Okay, you're fine. Here's the thing." It was yes or no type of questions, and the others that I talked to, they were out in 15 minutes. Go in, next one, whatever. But I'm sure that would be variable depending on who's, the person that's overseeing.
and that can feel really Like, where do I start? Do I bring in the entire binder for math and the entire binder for English? And Colin's exactly right. They don't want to see that because they don't have time to see that.
Right.
So they will not tell you exactly what to bring in because they can't really tell you exactly what to bring in. They're not really allowed to do that. You have to show clear and consistent instruction in the following 8 subjects. And so as long as you've done that, that's satisfied. But I did get one to say to me, I said, well, I just don't even know where to start. What do I do? If you want to take a more structured approach, they said, give me one paper from the beginning of the year, one paper from the middle of the year, one paper through 3/4 of the year, and one paper toward the end of the year. And I'm seeing that there's progression there, right? There's clear and consistent instruction. So that's how I handled it with my portfolio in each of those things. And when I overlapped something in history and writing, maybe vocabulary, or my vocabulary came from my history also, then I simply separated those into those various things, but they might have all pertained to history, but I had 4 things basically in each of those 8 areas in the K through 8th requirement, and showed them that, and they were satisfied.
So does it matter, do the child end up with a GED or a regular diploma? Or who says?
How many here, I'm 66, how many here have ever had someone ask for your diploma?
Have you ever had to tell them where you graduated or show your diploma?
At some point I have.
You have, okay. My children don't have diplomas. That's not true. My second born wanted to be a police officer. They require a diploma. So we went to the local school, private school, and they, sat down with him and interviewed him and gave him his diploma. The rest of them don't, and they're all in, high position jobs, whatever. My daughter is at the Navy Federal, she's in management, whatever. There are some things that you're gonna have to have that diploma, and if you do, and you know that ahead of time, or if your child is college bound, you know that ahead of time, you may wanna sign up with one of the ones that guides you through, and then they give you the diploma.
Okay.
But I was the principal. My wife was the main teacher. So I was like, okay, you graduated.
Okay.
The county/state will not require you to have them take a GED. They will not require you to check off,
So what do they have after they finish? What?
If you go through an oversight, if you're looking for that, you want them to have a diploma when they're done, you would oversight with what they call an umbrella school. A lot of private schools or churches, not operating schools, will provide oversight for your homeschooling. When you finish with those umbrella schools or oversight churches, some of them will provide you with a diploma. And so you would, if that's what you're looking for, you would choose one of those.
It's not that I'm looking for, I just didn't know.
Yeah, but you're not required. You're not required to test them out. You're not required to, check off a certain number of things in order to graduate them out, so.
Does that have to be a Maryland church or school as the umbrella?
I'm not sure, Christina might be able to answer that. There are ones, doesn't have to be county specific. Some outside the county offer blanket for the entire state. Churchville is in Harford County up near Baltimore, and they blanket all of Maryland. Others will restrict themselves to specifically their county.
Okay.
So we need to check with them, but I don't know if Christina can speak to that.
So I don't have a ton of information on that, but I do know that they have to be state approved. So I don't know that necessarily all of them reside in the state, but they have to be, the umbrella organizations have to be state approved. If you check out the website, hslda.org, it gives you kind of how to step by step. There is actually 4 options to homeschool in the state of Maryland. You can have homeschool under the portfolio option, which is kind of what we've been talking about here, where you do the work and you keep the portfolios of the children yourselves. You can homeschool under a church umbrella option, or under a church exempt school umbrella option, which could be more like your private schools. And then you can also homeschool under the state approved umbrella options, which is what she was speaking of. So if you check out that website, it gives you the details of exactly what you need to do for each of those types of options, depending on which one you choose.
And that was hslda.org?
Correct.
Homeschool Legal Defense Association.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I do know that, because I know some people for this next year for us as a trial year to see if it works. So my question was to, when I called home instruction to St. Mary's was, say I want him to go back for his junior year. She said that he would have to take a test at the county level to prove that he's passed those core subjects to get to be a junior. So which is why I went searching for an oversight school, because then I think with an oversight school, they can't ask him to take those tests. Am I correct?
So I'm not sure about that. I will tell you that I always say, I always joke, if mom gets run over by a bus tomorrow and you have to go to school, I wanted you not to have to backtrack. So I did have my kids take the PARP tests. And there are a number of tests in Charles County that if you were a public school student, you would be required to take in order to graduate. And so I don't want to necessarily speak to that, I'm not certain. If you're trying to float them.
It was just to make sure he got the credit.
Okay,
To
just to
be a
make sure
junior.
it's
Yeah, he would still have to pass the government MCAP coming up, but.
Right, there's like a Part 10 English and a government.
Yeah, but no, they were talking about that he actually would make the end of the year unit tests in order to be a junior. So basically it would to prove that he had gotten credit for his transcript to be entered back in. So which is why I was wondering if that's why we should use an oversight school if you're thinking about high school and possibly going back.
What county are you in?
St. Mary's.
I actually dealt with that issue with my older son. We left the homeschool world after being in homeschool from 4th grade, and he went to Leonardtown High School in the middle of 10th grade. And we were assigned a, what's the word? Counselor, just like a student would have in public school. And he took some tests. She looked at some of our curricula. She looked at what he had learned, what curriculum we had studied. And by working with me and taking tests and looking at the curriculum he learned, she was able to take a look at what their requirements were and give him credit based on what he had learned or what he had tested. And so he didn't fall behind at all. And I was not using anything but homeschooling, I had taken a class, hslda.org. You can go there and take a class on how to write your child's transcript. So my child actually had a transcript. So that also is another thing you can do. And it's not that hard to do, to create your child's transcript. But then you're the homeschool administrator, you're the one that did the teaching, and you're providing the school with a transcript of what this child has studied in your homeschool. So if you're looking at doing that, and you don't want to do the kind of oversight situation that you were talking about, you might want to use that as a means to track his achievement.
Okay, so you want to get a transcript?
You can create a transcript for your child.
That's what they ask for, not so much of a diploma, but.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were asking. And there is, HSLDA does they might do it online now. At the time, I traveled to Virginia and actually took the course in person and they train you on how to create your child's transcript.
It's online.
I think Christina wanted to add something about one of the points that were discussed earlier.
Sure, thank you. I was going to say, so if you transfer your child even out to a private school, they generally have a series of tests that they'll give them just to make sure that they have the curriculum necessary to fit into the grade level that they're transferring from, even if they're transferring from a public school. It's much easier when they're younger to transfer them in and out because the expectations are smaller. When they get to high school, my understanding from going from homeschooling back into public school is they will give them some basic tests just to make sure that they qualify for, for example, if they wanted to go to Algebra 2 or versus Algebra 1, to be able to do that, they will give them a series of tests. But as long as they, have that information, that background, they will place them in the correct classes. So you can definitely, if you're keeping up with the homeschooling, and oftentimes what I've heard and what I've seen from a private school perspective is that the students are generally so much further ahead that taking those tests is no problem at all.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? No?
I think I perceived part of what you were asking, and I'm not sure that we totally answered it. And because I've been out of the homeschool world for a while, I'm just going to tell you what my experience is, and you can probably jump in and correct me if I'm wrong. The subjects that students are needing to take at each grade level, I always went to the state Board of Education website and found, there's pages there that say, okay, if you're in 10th grade, these are the subjects that should be covered. And so that's where you go to find out, okay, is he supposed to be taking algebra or is he supposed to be taking trigonometry in 10th grade or whatever? That information is at the State Board of Education website. Is that correct still?
That is correct.
Yes, yep. And for high school, it will give you more of an overall what needs to be covered in high school. And for the younger grades, it will be more specific to each.
So you're saying the curriculum that you get for each level is not necessarily state proven?
Yes, that's correct. You
Okay.
select the curriculum that you think is best for you and your students. You can go to the State Board of Education website to look at what subject matter should be covered at that grade level.
Gotcha, okay.
You will find curricula that are aligned to Common Core too. So some math programs will give you a non-Common Core, their curriculum before Common Core came in, and then they will have a Common Core option too. So that if you were potentially trying to flip in and out, and you were really wanting to be mindful of staying on track
Well, we definitely will not be doing Common Core.
Yeah. But I'm just saying that is an option some folks need to, I know, yeah.
I hate that, I don't even know why they came up with that,
I
honestly.
Well, are there any other questions?
If we wanted
Yes,
to
sir.
join an umbrella group or something, do you have information on those somewhere around here?
I have a lot of written information here for you to look at.
I can pull that up for you pretty easily. There is a list online that gives you by county
Okay.
which ones are approved for your county. They do need, like Christina said, they do need to be state approved, and HSLDA.org will have that list, but I'm pretty sure your St. Mary's Home Instruction also has their own site that tells you which ones they've approved, and the state has.
For that, St. Mary's?
Hmm?
We're in Calvert County.
You're in Calvert, so Calvert will have that too, but Maryland has also an overall list broken down by county
Okay.
of the umbrella organizations. So you could find Calvert there, you could find it on HSLDA, you could probably find it under Calvert.
If we're
Calvert Home
in
Instruction.
Calvert, we can't join the St. Mary's group, if we like that one better?
If they're approved, yes, you can.
Okay.
So like I said, there is one in Hartford County, way up by Baltimore,
Right.
that is approved in a lot of different counties.
Oh, some
So-
are only approved for that county.
Yeah, some
see.
just, I guess they didn't wanna, go beyond that.
Gotcha.
They didn't apply to be approved, so.
And that's the end of our formal session. So we'll break out after each panelist has closing remarks. Comments?
Okay, I'll just use it for closing. I have a question, whatever. But I was telling Cindy when we were preparing for possible questions, for 30-plus years, I've been involved in homeschool. It's always the same thing. I don't feel qualified. How do you get your curriculum, which we covered tonight?
Then once you get past that, it's, well, what about socialization? Once you get past that, what about sports? But I'd like to address just the socialization part for a minute. One of the things that's very noticeable about my children, and others have commented on it, so it's not just me as a biased parent, my children are comfortable with any age. Any age. And I think that when you're in a classroom setting, public or private, doesn't make any difference, that the child becomes more geared toward that age group. And I've had many, many comments about, your children they can talk to anybody any age. They're comfortable with any age. They talk to an 80-year-old, or they can talk to somebody younger than them. And that was one of my goals. I listed the things that I'd like to see in my children, and I listed the things I like to avoid in my children. And one of the things was for them to be independent thinkers and maybe a little too independent, but anyway, and to be able to figure out things on their own. And one of the things in my past that I said, yes, it happened. They found a little rabbit out in the yard, and they came in, hey, we caught a rabbit, I'm on the phone, and they said, Dad, what do you feed a rabbit? And before I could answer, never mind, we'll look it up in the encyclopedia. Now this is before internet, now we'll Google it. So it all depends on what's important to you. you know, for me, socialization is not, you know, just go along to get along, but being a leader and being able to relate to anybody of, you know, any background or any age group. You know, they just are very, you know, open to that. They get along with everybody.
Shannon, any closing remarks?
I would just encourage you that you can do it. That it will seem overwhelming at first. You will make some mistakes, and that's okay. And that that you're your child's best teacher, and no one has their best interests more at heart than you do. I would also say be aware that that is an intense situation, you and your child, so sometimes it needs some space to breathe too, right? It's a one-on-one tutoring situation. If they're not getting it, you think it's either you or them. Maybe it's not, maybe it's just today is not the day. Maybe they didn't get enough sleep, maybe they need to eat a sandwich. If they're teenagers, maybe they need to sleep a little bit more. And tomorrow can bring a whole different day. Do math in the morning, not in the afternoon.
Cindy, any closing remarks?
I really think it's important to echo what she said about you can do this. I probably was a person who had so much on my plate that I shouldn't have considered homeschooling, but I had a child that really needed to be homeschooled. And if you want this to work, you can make this work. I think the hardest thing I had to learn was the self-discipline. Not only my own self-discipline, but in engaging my child in the self-discipline. Okay, it's 9 a.m. I know you're involved in whatever they're involved in. You know what the rule is. At 9 o'clock we stop. And almost every single day we were done with our homeschooling in time to have lunch. And so the deal always was we start on time so that we can end on time. And I had to learn to be self-disciplined, and my children had to learn to be self-disciplined. I did not have the opportunity to do as Collins and his family did because my time was already called for on other fronts. And so I had a commissioner meeting on Tuesday. We didn't homeschool on Tuesday. We homeschooled on Saturday instead. So those things you can make this work, and you can do this. And I would encourage you, if you think that you can't do it, to talk to some people who've homeschooled, and if they can do it, I think you can do it too. The resources are out there. And I think if you need a support group, the support groups are out there, and the people that want to homeschool and you want to homeschool with them. There's a great article here that I would recommend for anyone who wants to look at the pod concept that was brought up before. There's more information about that. So yeah, you can do this.
And it's not to say that there won't be days where you'll wonder why you did this. And particularly in October and March, it seems every year there's the times where I'm like, little yellow bus, do you have room for 5 more? But you have days like that. Some days are like that, but overall it's not like that. So just give yourself some grace.
I never experienced that, but we never had the classroom.
Yeah, give yourself some grace.
I enjoyed my children, I still do, and I figured if somebody, public school, whatever's going to help, I'd like to help with the diapers. By the time they get 4 years old, it's like, look, I've done the hard work.
And finally, from Christina.
I would just like to say that if you're considering homeschooling right now, there's so many opportunities, and there's so many resources, and so many families that are in the same boat that are considering this, that have never considered it before. I would highly recommend that you get in touch with some of those people, join some of those groups, and surround yourself with the support that you're going to need. Because I know myself, having my kids here all day in the spring while trying to work, there was definitely those days when I could have probably given both of us some grace, and instead it came out as probably crazy mom screams. So make sure that you're surrounding yourself with that support system that's going to help you get through those days when they do occur.
All right. Again, everyone, thank you for coming. And really, can we have a hand for our panel? They were